Going to be getting started in about 2 minutes, so thank you for your patience. Well, welcome everyone to the Santa Clara Stadium Authority news conference regarding recent board actions concerning Levi's stadium operations. I'm Lenka Wright, the Director of Communications for both the City of Santa Clara and the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, which are two separate public bodies. For the news conference, you will hear from Santa Clara Mayor Lisa M. Gilmore and Brian Doyle, who is the City Attorney and Stadium Authority Counsel. Also saying a few words is Alex Torkey. He's with the Santa Clara Police Officers Association. And you will also hear from Ruth Silvertobe, who is with the South Bay Labor Council. City Manager and Stadium Authority Executive Director Deanna J. Santana will also be joining us. And following these remarks, we will take and respond to questions. We will have limited time for questions. However, I will be moderating the Q&A. So now I will introduce Mayor Lisa M. Gilmore.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here today. With me, I'd like to introduce my fellow council members that are here. We have Councilmember Debbie Davis, Councilmember Teresa O'Neill, and Councilmember Kathy Watanabe. We also heard from Councilmember Karen Hardy. She's teaching this morning. She's very supportive and would have been here with us as well. So I'm Mayor Lisa Gilmore, the Mayor of Santa Clara, also the Chair of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority Board. When the 49ers signed on to manage Levi Stadium, they claimed to have substantial experience and expertise to operate the stadium for both NFL and non-NFL events like concerts. It's clear now that that claim was false. For the last 5 years, the 49ers have shown us that they do not have the experience and the expertise to operate a public facility like our stadium. And they have not managed it in the best interest of the Santa Clara residents and the Santa Clara taxpayers. And that's why we are here today, to announce that we have initiated legal action to remove the 49ers as our stadium managers for the stadium for non-NFL events. The 49ers will be entitled to play at Levi Stadium. They will still manage the facility for their own NFL events. But the 49ers have not complied with state wage laws. They have not been transparent or accountable to the public with financial information. They have mismanaged our stadium. So we must take this serious action on behalf of the Santa Clara residents and the taxpayers. Let me highlight some of the violations of the state law. The first issue is wage theft. All you have to do is look around this room to see the extent of the 49ers violations. The 49ers admitted that they have not complied with prevailing wage law. That's wage theft. Each one of the poster boards around the room here represents an individual who had their wages stolen from them as a result of the 49ers' poor management. These poster boards represent only one contract. Let me repeat, only one contract. The 49ers continue to withhold information, so we really don't know how much wage theft has occurred at the stadium. The 49ers have also violated conflict of interest laws. This year, we discovered the team's manager, stadium manager, Jim Mercurio, had received or purchased stock in 2 companies that were granted stadium authority contracts by the team. That's a clear conflict of interest and possible self-dealing. The California Fair Political Practices Commission is currently investigating that situation. So let me also highlight some of the team's problems with management and revenue. The 49ers failed to generate revenues for the non-NFL operations at the stadium. The net revenues for the last fiscal year came in over $18,000. That's right, I said $18,000. And this is after over $50 million of revenues and expenses for non-NFL events. They're projecting next year's revenue, net revenue, is 0 for non-NFL events. The annual projected revenue for the Stadium Authority and the General Fund was $2.5 million or more for 2019. That was a projection, but there were also promises made by the team. Look around the room and you'll see examples of what Santa Clara residents were told. $40 million guaranteed rent to the city, $26 million for schools, 2,200 long-term jobs, $249 million in annual regional economic boom. Finally, let me say that if the 49ers had a report card, I think we have created one here, it would not be pretty. Look at these grades, all Fs. Paying fair market value rent to the city, complying with state prevailing wage laws, maintaining separate records for stadium operations, and most importantly, being transparent with the public. It's clear the 49ers' performance off the field is terrible. We cannot let them to continue to manage or mismanage our stadium. That's why we, as the Stadium Authority Board, last evening, voted unanimously of those members present, 6 members, to begin legal action. I now would like to invite our City Attorney and General Counsel, Brian Doyle, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gilmore. Again, my name is Brian Doyle. I'm the City Attorney, and I'm the Stadium Authority Counsel. And I'm also almost a 30-year resident of Santa Clara. I live here, my family lives here, my kids go to school here. I know the other residents here. I was here for Measure J. I remember the promises made, and I see that the promises have been broken. There was one promise that the mayor didn't mention, and that was, if you look at the chart, they promised us $155 million in additional revenue in addition to just the base ground rent. This year, it became apparent that we're not receiving anywhere near that. In fact, this year, we're receiving zero ground rent. We're receiving ground rent, but we're receiving zero performance rent. And next year, it's projected we will also receive zero performance rent. Let me talk about what the action was that the council took yesterday. The council did vote to begin legal proceedings to terminate the management agreement. We're not terminating the 49ers management activities with regard to their NFL operations. I want to make that very clear. We're not trying to interfere in any way with their ability to play football. We're not interested in hurting their ability to become a winning team. We're not interested in them in hurting their chances to have a winning season. This is about accountability to the public, to my fellow residents, to our fellow residents. It is not about some personal spat with them. It is not about some effort to get back at them. It is about looking at what has happened and dealing with the failed promises, the failed commitments, and the absolute refusal to provide any transparency or accountability to the citizens who gave them a home field to play on. The 49ers have betrayed the voters. They've breached their fiduciary duties to book events that maximize revenue and minimize cost. They've engaged in self-dealing with regard to operational contracts, as well as booking events that are money losers to Santa Clara when it looks like they may well be benefiting economically from those events. And it's compounded, again, by their complete refusal to provide us the records that we deserve. It's violation of their duty under the contract to keep separate books of records for the NFL and the non-NFL seasons, as well as an apparent attempt to further confuse the financial situation. After a series of notices of default and notices of breach, they have still not cured several of the issues before us today: prevailing wages, and the duty to provide records and financial records, and the duty to pay contractors legally. The termination notice was served on the 49ers this morning. I served it by email. There's also a copy going by mail, and you all have copies as an attachment to this press release. We have set a termination date of November 15th. We believe that we wanted to give them time to get ready for the transition. We want to have time to hear back from them as to whether or not they would like to be relieved of some of their duties. They obviously are having a lot of problems in being able to perform these duties, perhaps, and I call upon them to consider just giving up some of these duties because they do not seem to be able to perform them legally. If the 49ers dispute and fight this termination notice, then unfortunately the dispute will proceed to confidential arbitration. I'm not happy about this going into confidential proceedings. I believe the public has a right to know. I believe the 49ers should agree to waive the confidentiality so that the public has a right to know what they've been doing. But if they do not, we may end up in going into confidential proceedings. I just want to say one more word, and that is you will hear from them. They have repeatedly reported out to you, and I have seen it in Twitter and other avenues of social media, that somehow this is some kind of personal thing to get back at something that they said about the city manager or the mayor. Nothing could be farther from the truth. These are pure deflections. I fully expect them to come after me personally. Watch for it. I'm sure something like that will happen. This is about the numbers. The numbers can't lie. We're getting 0 this year and 0 next year. This means that the general fund will suffer almost a $6 million loss over the next 2 years. We have to tell our residents, because the 49ers have so miserably failed in their performance of this management agreement, we will have to go and look for that money elsewhere to provide the services that you were expecting this year and next year. Thank you.
All right, I now invite Alex Torkey to the podium.
Good morning. I'm Alex Torkey, president of the Santa Clara Police Officers Association. I'm a police officer. My first priority is the safety of Santa Clara residents and neighborhoods. Last night, we learned that the city will receive 0 revenue from the stadium, and there will be about a $2.5 million shortfall. That's a big concern for the men and women of the Santa Clara Police Officers Association. We can't do our jobs if we don't have the resources to protect Santa Clara, its residents, and its neighborhoods. So I stand here today to say that the men and women of the Santa Clara Police Officers Association stand with the city. Thank you.
And now I invite Ruth Silvertope to the podium. Okay, Ben Field, please.
Okay. Morning, everybody. My name is Ben Field. I'm the executive officer of the South Bay Labor Council, which represents organized labor in the South Bay, over 100 local unions in the South Bay. Years ago, when the 49ers campaigned to build a stadium in this city, they promised to provide good quality jobs in this community. And it's apparent now that they have broken that promise. Here's what we know. Thanks to the work of city staff, it came to light that the 49ers had not paid prevailing wage on one contract, the Next Systems contract. And the total wage theft in that contract is about $85,000. You see the documentation of that wage theft around you in this room. It also came to light that the Niners appear not to have paid prevailing wage on other contracts. And so, with Ruth Silvertope, who's going to speak in a moment, the head of the Wage Theft Coalition, we worked to put together a Public Records Act request for the wage records on other contracts. Now, the 49ers have a legal requirement to keep those records. To date, they have not provided them. They have a legal requirement to provide certified payroll records, but we haven't seen those records. They've got a legal requirement to disclose those records, and their failure to do so is also a violation. And so what does this all lead to? It leads to a strong suspicion that the Next Solution contract, the Next Systems contract, is just the tip of the iceberg, that there is a lot more wage theft out there that we have yet to discover. And so today I'm calling on the Attorney General to intervene. It's been too long that the 49ers have stonewalled our request to get payroll records. The Attorney General needs to intervene in order to get those records and find out the extent of the failure to pay prevailing wage. Thank you.
And now I invite Ruth to the microphone.
Thank you. I do want to make clear that I'm not affiliated with the South Bay Labor Council, despite the introduction. My name is Ruth Silver-Tobe, and I'm the supervising attorney of the Workers' Rights Clinic at the Catherine and George Alexander Community Law Center at Santa Clara University School of Law, and I coordinate the Santa Clara County Wage Theft Coalition. I'm here to express my concern that the 49ers did not pay contract workers more than $85,000 correctly or timely on the contract that you see, and that according to the City of Santa Clara, it's unable to monitor and audit whether there has been more wage theft because the 49ers have provided the city with documentation covering the past 5 years that contained missing bid quotes, missing estimates, missing contracts, incomplete records, public works projects not categorized as public works according to the City of Santa Clara, no annual reports, and no certified payrolls, which are required on all public works projects. Wage theft is a scourge that is all too pervasive in our county. It hurts workers and their families, and it affects society, creating unfair competition with law-abiding businesses, increasing demand on safety net programs, and reducing needed tax revenue. There is already a culture of noncompliance in this country where businesses commit wage theft with impunity. The San Jose Office of the Labor Commission handles 300 claims from workers in the county each month. According to a groundbreaking study, workers lose 15% of their wages each year to wage theft. Wage theft is not aberrant or rare, committed by a few rogue industries on the periphery of the economy. It takes place in industries that span the economy. The 49ers are worth $3.5 billion, according to Forbes magazine, with revenues of $492 million. The 49ers are number 5 on the Forbes valuation list. And yet, according to the City of Santa Clara, the 49ers did not pay contract workers $85,000 correctly and timely on one contract. The 49ers' failure to provide complete documentation, and in some cases no documentation, in response to the City of Santa Clara's requests, and no response to our Public Records Act request, raises red flags. Workers must be compensated properly. Workers on public works projects must be paid a prevailing wage, and certified payrolls must be provided for public works projects. The Santa Clara County Wage Theft Coalition is calling for a thorough investigation of all contracts with the city and the 49ers. We call on the 49ers to be transparent and to provide complete records and reports. If more wage theft is uncovered, then the 49ers must be held accountable by state authorities. We cannot allow any business, let alone a storied football team, to commit the crime of wage theft. We cannot allow any business, let alone a storied football team, to hurt hardworking contract workers by stealing their pay. We ask for transparency, accountability, and for contract workers on 49ers projects to be paid what they are owed. Thank you.
Okay, I will now open it up to the question and answer period. Keep in mind, we only have a few minutes, so I will call upon you if you would raise your hand and state your name and the media outlet you represent. Please limit it to one question, just so that way we can give an opportunity to everyone in the room to ask their question. Okay, I will start with you in the back, TiVo. And can you speak a little louder, please? Yeah, you can just go.
The contract requires that we mutually select a new manager between us and the 49ers, and we would go through a public process, probably what should have happened in the first place. I failed to mention that the management agreement was a no-bid contract to the 49ers. So any replacement contract, we would go through a public process. The proposals would be reviewed, and any decisions about it would go to the Stadium Authority Board for public review and public discussion before any new contractor was chosen.
Just to clarify, I imagine a bid will take time about
We might, depending on how this plays out, we don't know whether we'll actually get possession back of the operations within the time that we've requested in our notice of termination. If this goes to litigation, it could change. But if we do have a situation where we have to have management in the stadium for the non-NFL events, we believe we could get an interim contractor in there for a short term to hold the fort down until we can get one that's chosen by a public process.
Okay, yes, you, sir, in the front. Please identify who you are and who you represent, please.
Well, I am more of an engaged citizen. I'm a blogger. It's called Plastic Alto. I'm a taxpayer and voter in Palo Alto. My name is Mark Weiss, WEISS. I actually was a reporter for the Peninsula Times Tribune Palo Alto Times 35 years ago when this body voted to purchase the land underneath what was then Marriott's Great America and commit to a public amenity, amusement amenity.
Okay, please get to your question.
How does the institutional historical relationship between we the people here and the amusement industry and the governance and the ordinance for the amusement park color the relationship with pro football, big time concerts? Is there an institutional
Okay, that's not applicable to what we're talking about today, so we'll talk to you after the news conference. Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, Len Marinus, KPIS Channel 5. Can you give us a little more detail on the wage theft? Was it one group of workers? What sort of work were they performing? Was it multiple workers? Were they not paying overtime but paying some wages? How did that fall?
Well, unfortunately, because of the 49ers' inability to give us the records or refusal to give us the records, we don't know. This is, as we said, it was the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps Deanna.
So the 49ers came forward at the end of 2018 seeking the board approval for a contract over $250,000. That required that we look at the contract a little bit more closely. And through discussions of due diligence, we discovered that the 49ers did not understand what the state prevailing wage. If you look at the document on the board, there's an email here dated March 12th from Jim Mercurio, where he confirms that this was in writing a state prevailing wage contract. What we found differently is that they did not pay their laborers for installing epoxy or a covering on the flooring at the stadium, their full wages. Every one of these sheets, if you just want, I'll tell you how to read them. There's a column there that says state prevailing wage. In one instance, an employee should have been paid $61 per hour. And when you look at what the 49ers actually pay them, it was $18 per hour. If you look at the form from Next System itself, the quote that they gave us, the fee that they charged was $160 per hour for weekdays. For weekend work, it was $215. These documents are not the Stadium Authority's documents. These documents are the 49ers documents. They tell the truth of what has happened here with the state prevailing wage violations.
Thank you, Deanna J. Santana, City Manager and Stadium Authority Executive Director. Yes, in the back.
And the TV news channel too. So the stadium's had a bunch of big concerts come in. Is the contention that there is money, it's just not making its way to the city, or is the contention that they are not bringing in enough business to make a profit? What's going on here?
All you have to do, let me get to the microphone. All you have to do is look at this chart here. This is the 49ers summary in February 2019 of the events. It shows the revenue and the expenses. Out of the 10 events, you have 6 money-losing events. That's their performance record. And I want to mention here, the Red Box Bowl, we circled it because this is a event where they scheduled a $500,000 loss for which they own and manage.
Okay, I will take one last question. Okay, we'll do two more, and actually, go ahead, Mike.
Michael and KCBS. So the way I understand it, for non-NFL games, they need approval from the board for purchases. So what's the bar? I mean, they need approval to buy paper clips, or what are we talking about?
This is a total red herring. I mean, anybody that knows anything about public purchasing knows that you can do things like open public purchase orders, you can piggyback onto government contracts, they can get their supplies, materials, and equipment, no problem, using an open and apparent compliant procurement process. If you listen to what I said last night, it's pretty clear that their assertions about these minor dollar purchases are just simply demonstrate that they don't understand how public purchasing works. All we're asking them to do is to bring their purchases forward to the public to let them know, how did you purchase this? What was the basis upon which you're making the decision? What are you asking for? We're just not getting that information now, and we can no longer just let them have access to public funds without having an assurance that they know what they're doing.
Can I get one more question?
Okay, let me just, yes, sir, right then.
Jody Meacham, I'm from the Silicon Valley Business Journal. What was the reason for doing this in the closed session where the 49ers notified ahead of time, and what's the legal authority that allows that to happen?
I'm struggling to know what you mean by this, but this is serving, well, the serving of the note, this was simply the service of the notice of termination. We have the right under the Brown Act to bring a proposed action forward that will institute litigation in closed session before we announce it in public. We had one meeting where we discussed it in closed session, and we immediately came forward and explained to the public what happened at that meeting. We provided the votes. All our actions were in complete compliance with the Brown Act.
Okay, and right there?
Yeah, can someone please address the allegation from the 49ers that Santa Clara is micromanaging the stadium, that events or acts such as the Rolling Stones don't want to come here anymore because of too many rules and regulations that they don't see at other venues?
Sure. The 49ers have shown that they don't like to follow the state law. The issues related to the Rolling Stones, let me first start with, on September 5th, they were noticed about the action that the council took last night relative to the changes to their procurement delegated authority. What they did the week after is they solicited 2 letters from promoters regarding the Rolling Stones to show that we mismanage or micromanage. Let me be very clear. I've said this before. The issues related to the management of the event were state building codes and state fire codes. The 49ers don't like state laws. They don't like the prevailing wage. They don't like the public works state laws. They don't like the building codes and the fire codes. And they have chosen to take personal attacks about micromanaging when clearly, with the lack of oversight, this is what the 49ers have the capability of doing. This is what they have done for the last 5 years, is wage theft and booking money-losing events. That deserves public oversight. This is a public agency.
I want to follow up on something with that, because that's been a prevailing, sentiment from them constantly. They always bring up, minor issues, blow up other issues, take personal attacks. I've been the subject of many of them. My council members, now they're on our professional staff, because they want to distract all of you from what the real issues are. That's what they want to do. Rather than cooperate and follow the law, they are fighting in the court of public opinion. That's what they do. We prefer fighting in a court of law, because that's where the facts, the documents, and the law really matters to us. And if you look at our record, the public always wins. And we are going to continue to do that and continue to fight in a court of law if we have to do, because the public wins. And that's why we're here. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I know there are a couple outstanding questions. I will meet with you afterwards. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here for the news conference. Again, this is about accountability, compliance, and transparency. So thank you again for being here this morning.